Anita, how's your mental health?
Questionable at all times. You know this.
Yeah, how's the mental health of your children?
Also a little bit tricky. Can I tell you my experience in trying to find therapists for myself and my kids, Mel?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is how it goes. You ask around your friends and your family for a referral for somebody who's nearby. You finally find somebody who sounds like they might work for your family. You give them a call and you find out that A, they're not accepting new patients, or B, they have a huge wait list. So you start over again and you ask people if they know anybody who would be a good therapist and a good fit. Finally, you find one, you go and you meet with them and you figure out that you don't actually like them that much. But it's been so much work to find somebody who you can go to in your area that you're kind of stuck with them. Well, do you have any ideas for how to get around this?
I do, because guess what? I've actually had some therapists that I have found on my own, which involves what you're saying. Sometimes I remember one time I was like 3 hours in the bathtub on my phone looking through websites. I was such a prune at the end. But I have also had the experience with working with BetterHelp. And it was like, I don't want to say too good to be true, but because it is true, but it's like amazing because I was matched with my therapist within 24 hours.
And you didn't have to go through all of that other ridiculous process of trying to find somebody. And here's the cool thing too, is if that person didn't work out for you, you can just switch and say, and it's not like you're committing to another years long search for somebody who you're going to jive with.
It's true. And I lucked out, or maybe just BetterHelp is really good at matching people together because I never had to change my therapist. I loved her. Perfect fit for me. And I know that some of our friends have used BetterHelp and they've had to change therapists, and boom, same day, you can change.
Easy peasy.
You can ghost your therapist. Get a new one.
I love this idea. BetterHelp is one of our sponsors. If you use our promo code trybetterhelp.com/WWDN, you get 10% off your first month. And we totally recommend it.
Yes. Get some therapy. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN. Anita!
What?
It's the week after Memorial Day and we're alive.
Barely.
Tell me about your week.
Or
don't.
I don't even know where to start. How was your Memorial Day? Let's go back to Memorial Day.
It's good. Vomited unicorn stuff on Scott's grave. Left the house.
Good job.
That's about it.
I went to the cemetery a few times. I did not want to vomit on Jason's grave, and so I did not. I went up and put his mustache symbol on the not on his headstone, on his spot. And that was, I can't even remember. I mean, it's been so long in a widow's life.
A whole year has happened in a week.
It really has. Yeah. So I think I had feelings on Memorial Day, but I can't even remember now.
Okay.
Let's move on, shall we? So school is out for the summer for my kids. I have a love-hate relationship with the summer. I love not having to wake people up in the morning or make them go places. But I hate that they never, ever, ever leave my house. Ever.
Not even to go outside and play with their friends?
Yeah, I mean, they do. But with school, they were gone, and you could plan on them being gone for a good chunk of the day, and there's none of that. There's just drama and fighting and wanting to be entertained.
Dinosaurs, iPads, lost chargers.
Chore charts. Oh, yeah. We got chore charts here.
And then you had an issue with your car. That's fun.
I had a bad day this week. My car broke. The power went out. It was like 1,030 degrees in my house, and my kids went bananas. I don't understand what was going on there. And my sister is back in the hospital and is very, very, very ill. It's just been one of those.
Like when it rains, it pours.
Yeah, it's pouring.
Well, I don't have those kinds of tragedies this week, so I'm sorry that you have. I don't remember anything of the week, but I have been having a ton of dreams of people that are already dead haunting me. So I'm kind of confused in reality. Like, I have these dreams and then I think that they're real and then I wake up and it's not real, but was it? I finished The Body Keeps the Score, Anita.
Is it like a super big book? Like, is it long or is it just really dense?
It's like a regular book, but it's very dense because
it's like textbooky in its lingo and stuff. So it's not like a nice little read here and there. It's like you really have to focus, and
it's definitely not fluff. Every single word carries weight. So that's why it's taken me so long to read it. But I love it. I think that it's so beneficial.
That's awesome.
Some people have reached out and said that they have started reading it too. So yay for us trauma brains trying to understand our brains.
So you can bring it to me and I can read it now.
Even though I can't remember anything that happened last week, I do remember something that is coming up this week. So my friend that died of COVID, he was a piano player and I am taking his spot in a gig that is upcoming. That's this Friday. And his widow, who is also my friend, is the singer. And it's her first gig since her person has died. So it's going to be
something.
Fun time. It's going to be something. It's going to be good and bad and awesome and awful and strengthening and who knows what. So if any of y'all live in Salt Lake City, come to the Gateway by the Fountain at 6 p.m. Friday, June 11th to support some widows. Mostly to support her. I'm fine. This is for her. So there's that. Friday.
I'm a little nervous for you. I hope it goes well.
You're going to come, though, right? Because you can bring kids. Because you can let them run free.
Free and wild.
The concert is free. I don't know if it's being streamed. If it is, we will stream it.
If it's not, you won't.
Guess what else is happening this weekend?
I think I know. And I'm so excited. And I just can't hide it. I'm about to lose control, and I think I like it. For our monthly Widow Wives Club Zoom hang, we wanted to do something that was fun. So Mel and I have come up with the idea of having a virtual Zoom dance party. Now, I know that some of your reactions in your head are this. No. I'm not doing that because number one, you're worried that you're going to look stupid, or two, you're worried that you can't dance, or three, you don't think it's going to be that fun. Mel, are any of these good excuses not to come?
No, because if you don't want to dance, you can just sit there.
And you can watch us dance and we will not feel like we're stupid. I would just suggest closing your blinds, letting anybody who lives with you know that you've lost your mind and that you're going to be dancing in the living room by yourself.
And even if you're not dancing, you can listen to some good tunes because we are curating a playlist for it. And you can also still interact with your Zoom friends via chat. So lots of options. Introvert, extrovert, dancer, non-dancer, anything.
We expect some great moves from Marie. We expect some so-so moves from the rest of us. Get yourselves a drink. Get yourself some chips, some tacos, and join us.
Yes.
The playlist is going to have some appropriate Dark Widow humor in it.
Yep.
That's all I'll say about that.
We're here for that. So that is this Saturday, June 12th at 12 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time and or 7 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, whatever that is for you.
RSVP to widowwedonow@gmail.com so we can send you the Zoom link and you can come and dance with us.
Speaking of joining things, don't forget to join our Widow Wives Club on Facebook. Answer all the questions. If you're having a hard time finding how to join the club, you can type Widow Wives Club in the search in Facebook. You can also go to our Instagram and check our link in our bio And our public Facebook page also has the link to join. Do it.
Great support for anybody who needs it. If you want to help us keep the podcast going, then you should join the Patreon. It's patreon.com/WWDN. We have 4 different tiers.
Starting at $5.
At our Widow Bestie level, which is $10 a month, you get a shout out on the podcast every week. So we're going to do our Patreon shout out starting now. Our secret dead husband encourages you to come to the dance party on Saturday. Whether she does or not, we just put those words in her mouth.
Yes, that's what happens when you give us free reign. You may regret it. Next, we have Constance Dahlbach,
David Kelly,
Dawn Satterwhite,
Ivan the Misner,
Kat the Cat,
Amy, the Amy,
another Amy, Amy Sapp,
Ashley Hahn,
Christina Shiflett,
Mindy Holmgren,
Danielle Katterberg,
Dennis Brasso.
Oh, that was very, very exotic.
Mm-hmm.
Jenny Taylor,
Jenny Wang,
Kirsten Stromberg,
Laura Bradbury,
Missy with the broken brain and the broken foot, Schubert.
Fist Pump, Rachel Barbosa,
Ooh, 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 Sarah Morris.
who almost had to jumpstart my car in the parking lot.
Did you see her?
Yes.
At the store? Oh my gosh.
Yes. When my car wouldn't start.
My mom, Sylvia.
Karen Cornejo,
And Timu. Anna Tracy.
Christina Scambato,
Christine Anderson.
Diana Becker,
Emily Thornton.
Emily Toledo,
Aaron Posick.
Gabe Lozano,
Ian Sini.
Ileana Bell,
Jamie Aliota.
The Grasshopper,
The E. Jane Randall.
Jenny Barrow,
Jocelyn Milo.
the Fancy Lady Joy Kirsch,
Katie Radcliffe.
Kara Scara Provitt,
Lori Farrington.
Marie Disco Inferno Hoffman,
Marjorie Lewis.
Mary McGowan,
Peter Rukavina.
Sarah Kennedy,
Shannon Helm.
Tammy Schwartz,
Tara Wallace. Ms. Valerie Packer, who is starring in a theatrical play starting this week. Good luck, Val. Break a leg.
Whoa.
And
Terry Cloth Wendy,
I just had a visual of her as an entire terry cloth human.
You're welcome. Thank you to everybody who supports us on the Patreon. We really do appreciate and love all of you. We would love to see more of you on the Patreon if you're able. If you want to buy us just a taco, we actually do go eat tacos. It's buymeacoffee.com/widowwedonow.
Remember, if you want to join the Patreon, it's patreon.com/WWDN.
FYI, for the interview that we're just about to listen to, the topic is a little more sensitive than some of our other interviews, and so our guest wanted to stay a little more anonymous, so we're just going to be using her first name, and we're not going to be using any pictures of her. So we're going to just give her a little bit of space, but we're really thankful that she was willing to share her not-so-pretty story with us. I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
We're 2 young widows. We're just trying to figure out, now, shoot.
If Yoda said it, what would it be?
Now, widow, do we now?
That's the one. This episode is sponsored by the Misner Family Foundation in memory of Elisabeth Misner.
Sometimes we assume that unless we had a huge life insurance payout, we don't really need to know anything about investments or even finances. But guess what? A little knowledge of finances is critical for all of us. Maybe your partner was in charge of that stuff, and now you find yourself making all the decisions. Maybe you're mad about that. Maybe I am. Nicole from the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast is here to help. She tackles financial literacy by telling the stories of women and widows and finance experts and shares the lessons they've learned as certified financial planners. Whether you know a lot and feel confident in your financial decisions or feel unsure about all of that stuff, there is more to learn. Listen and subscribe to the He's Gone, But the Money's Not podcast on all podcast platforms. This ad was paid for by Rockhouse Financial, an SEC-registered investment advisor. All right, Mel, let's get to it. Do you want to play a little intro music for us?
Yes, I do. This is very important for our guest. Maybe it'll help you know who this guest is. Okay.
This is a story that takes place many years ago. Our heroine is named Ruth Valjean. Hi, Ruth. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for coming back from Les Mis to join us.
And tell us your miserable story.
Hi, that's not my name. Okay. Well, I think unlike a lot of the people I've noticed in the forum, I'm really late to the game. I've been widowed 11 years now, almost. This is actually the first time to tell my story to people that I don't know very closely. I actually decided when my husband died that when somebody dies, your business with them must be completely over because they no longer exist. So I tried really hard to make that true. And I know you're all looking at me like, boy, that's not very smart. And I didn't know that it wasn't very smart. And then my mother passed away 3 years later, and I was even more unhinged than when my husband passed. So I went to a grief counselor to talk about why I was so unhinged. And that took a few sessions, and then it took a few years of discussing my complicated grief with my husband. That's the short version of it all. I lived in a lot of self-denial, trying to tell myself to be kind to a memory that now I understand. It's okay to say it wasn't a good situation, to say the least. I was not in a good marriage. And it was kind of like all of those years, we were married 18 years, all of those years of pretending to myself and others continued after he died. So it's almost like that relationship proceeded. And I was pretending to everyone that I was, I was grief stricken, don't get me wrong. And had trouble, plugging back in. Thank God for my 2 boys, because they had to, if you have children, you have to get up because they need you to. I was in a complicated grief situation. So I was fighting my own guilt of my negative feelings, wondering why I wasn't celebrating him, wondering why I couldn't find just pure compassion. And then I realized through my therapist, who was amazing, that I was really asking very few and asking all of the wrong questions of myself. So it's a very complicated story.
So, Ruth, would it be fair to classify your situation as betrayal trauma and being a widow in betrayal trauma?
Absolutely betrayal trauma. As I said, we were not in a state of bliss most of the time I was married. And like I said, I didn't really understand that. And what happened is actually the culminating event, if you will, about a month before he died. I used to get up in the middle of the night if I had insomnia and just putter. I might unload the dishwasher, whatever. It was just something I did. So that night I remembered my children were then ages 9 and 5. I got up to print off a form for my son who was going to the pediatrician the next day that he needed for school. But I went downstairs. Now we have to go back in technology time to the year 2010. And I was looking for a PDF that I had loaded in my email. And in those days, PDFs were not named. They were a bunch of numbers, 10, blah, 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 blah. So I thought, well, this is recent. So I went to the first PDF, opened it. It was not the form from the pediatrician. It was a letter that my husband had written to a woman. And in the letter, it stated that they were each in relationships that were not fulfilling. And the woman's relationship wasn't fulfilling because her fiance was not able to meet her intelligence levels, so she didn't find him challenging. He stated that his challenge with his wife, that would be me, that I was cold, disengaged, and I think he said the word strident, which was amazing because as I'm reading it, I'm like, dude, that's what I'm thinking about you all the time. And so I ran upstairs and I shook him and I said, what is this? And he said, where did you get that? So I don't know, people who've been married or in long-term relationships, nothing good comes from big drama at 2 or 3 in the morning. So, and then we're also trying to be quiet because we have these boys. Long story short, because I also was heavily manipulated and didn't realize that I was being manipulated all the time. Gaslit. He actually told me that he had written it, had not sent it, that she was a friend, and that he had commiserated with her about difficulties in their relationships. She didn't even live in state. They had never seen each other. She was somebody he knew a long time ago. As we're talking, I looked at the name, which I guess I could say, and I realized the name was a woman's name that he had mentioned to me about 4 months before on my birthday in a restaurant. So I started connecting these dots and I said, you've been talking to her for a long time, blah, 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 blah. And then I've got to be honest, and I'm embarrassed at that woman that I'm going to start telling you about, that woman, I actually, by the end of this long, horrible dialogue full of lies, I was starting to feel guilty that I had woken him up. I was starting to feel guilty that he had to go to work on Saturday. He worked on Saturdays and I didn't. And I felt like, well, maybe I've blown this too much out of proportion. And long story short, I was gaslit, manipulated into feeling that I'd over-responded.
Because it's your fault that he did these things, right? This is classic manipulation techniques by...
Well, and it was also like that I had been snooping because, again, let's go back in time. Technology speaking, we had a desktop that was shared, and I felt like, I have fatigued him. He's going to work. I'm home today. That was, I shouldn't have reacted so strongly. I could have waited till he got up. So when it was all over, long story short, I was feeling like I had, infringed upon his time and sleep and well-being. And that was often how things went between us.
How long had you been married at this point in time?
18 years.
And had your marriage been generally rocky, or did you feel like there were good times and you kind of grew apart, or was it just like never really great?
That's a really good question, and one I've spent a lot of time asking myself. The truth is we had a very distant relationship. Again, I didn't know that. He was not available ever. Like every time something was happening, it was always of utmost importance. I had cancer when my kids were 5 and 2. He never came to one chemotherapy treatment. Right. And at the time, he just wasn't that guy to ask. It didn't occur to me that was completely disgusting. I mean, it just didn't even occur to me. The truth is, I remember saying to him, because this is creepy to tell you all this, but when you go in for a chemotherapy, yes, you're supposed to come back. For me, it was 2 weeks, but it's not like on a dime. So you had some wiggle room. So every time I went, they'd say, well, when do you want to come back? So when I had a treatment, I would say to him, what should I tell them? What time of day, what day of the week works? And he would say, it doesn't matter. You go what works for you. I thought that meant you have cancer. I'll drop everything to be with you. What it meant was I have no intention of coming, so it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter because I'm not going to be there. He was just absolutely disengaged. I was somebody, I go back, I'm like, what was I doing? We were basically sexless for a very long time. That was an issue that if I brought it up, it led to a fight that I would ultimately go, you know what? That wasn't worth it. It was not worth going there. So I learned, I guess it was like a very weird form of abuse. I wasn't called names, but my actions were questioned. I just walked on eggshells to keep peace, and it was always easier, not easier, but path of least resistance for me to question what I'm doing wrong and what can I do to change, and not to ask anything of him.
Has a therapist or anybody brought up emotional abuse with regard to those things and helped you classify them, and do you now see them as that?
Yeah, we talked about emotional abuse, and we actually went so far as to diagnose my husband. My therapist and I talked about the potential for borderline personality disorder, which is, I mean, it manifests a lot of different ways, but it made sense because outside of the house, he was this great guy. In fact, I liked going out with him because that was a cooler person than I lived with. So there was a presentation. Really?
Let's get him out of the house. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was like this presentational quality.
There's some narcissism. Yeah.
Oh, way narcissism. Way narcissism. So it's just like, we had a lot in common. Like we liked the arts. We had things that, like I said, if I met him today without a history, I'd probably still say, "Hey, baby," because we have so much in common. He had a lot to admire: intelligence, altruism, very industrious, but just could not switch gears to slow down and be a partner and to be home and to be intimate on any level.
What did he do for a job, Ruth? Did he blame a lot of his distance and not being available on his profession?
This will rock your world. He was a clinical psychologist.
Ah!
No!
Yeah.
I'm stomping on that floor.
Yeah. And that was another reason why I'm like, well, it's got to be something.
You're like, I have to be the crazy one because he knows crazy people.
Absolutely. But
oh my gosh.
But can I tell you, I kind of understand it better now, because like when I try to help people, I do phone calls for women with metastatic breast cancer. I get upset and sad and worry about them and wonder about them. And I've even been inappropriate and made contact with them just to check on them. But if you're not engaging on a personal level, you're a great therapist, So I think he was probably really good at it, because that's the opposite of an intimate relationship, is a therapeutic relationship. It's like you lay all your guts on the table and people do not connect to you in an intimate way. They stand back to help you. So I understood that better later, to say the least.
Now you can go back and tell us about, you kept him up at night. You thought you'd over.
You thought it was all you, and you were walking on eggshells.
So the name I came to realize was somebody.
Fontaine? Or Eponine?
Cosette? Please not Cosette.
No, Cosette was a good guy.
Yeah, she was a good guy. Well, anyway, if the person whose name I don't want to make up a name. Anyway, her name, she was somebody you went to high school with. So there's that. Why does that always happen? So I kind of put that to rest, but was still full of anxiety, not fully resolved, questioning, just everything was open-ended. I was not doing well. So then I get wined and dined. I just snapped my fingers. He took me to a hotel downtown. We ate outside. I got a really pretty amethyst necklace, and he told me, "Oh, I've never given you jewelry, blah, blah, blah." And I was eating it up. It was great. I mean, it was something like we'd almost never done. The kids were with relatives who were in downtown our city. So it was great. And then that was probably about a week after that lovely event that night. Then about, I'd say 2 weeks later, let's go back in time with technology. He had a BlackBerry. BlackBerries, for those of you who are not as old as I am and have only seen smartphones the way they are now, used to list all of your messages, email, text, phone call. It would just be in a straight list, just a list. And it's pretty handy. So his was on the counter, and I thought, he was downstairs. So I went over to the BlackBerry. Never did this in my life. And there's an email from this woman.
Fontaine.
And it states, and he's going to go out of town in a week, by the way, to Boston for a work deal, which was real. I knew about the work deal. I saw it. I looked it up. And it states in this email from this woman, I will see you at the blah, blah, blah restaurant, the table number.
At the barricade.
And even below a picture of Don Quixote, because he was reading Don Quixote, a book that I had given him a new translation.
Okay,
whatever.
The musical thread in here is actually unbelievable.
Right. But, so my point is, not only were they meeting, they had really invested in each other. She knew about Don Quixote. She knew. I mean, oh my gosh, they were totally connecting on stuff. So he was downstairs, and you know what I did? I thought, I'm just going to put that in my back pocket and see if I need it. And I said nothing. And then out of the blue, like a few days later, and he's getting ready to go to Boston, I said, so you're not talking to that person anymore, right? Oh, no. That's ridiculous. That's da-da-da-da. And I said, and the person was in New Hampshire. I can say that. And he said, Boston's really close to New Hampshire. You're not going to New Hampshire, right? No. You know what? No. So I was assured, but I still had it in my back pocket. So I knew the restaurant's phone number, the time of the reservation, and again, back in technology, those were the days when you would call a restaurant. When the time rolled around that she had said they would meet, I had really hoped that I would call the restaurant and they'd say, nope, nobody here. Nobody at that table. In fact, whatever. So I called the restaurant, got a hostess, and I said his name. And I said with another woman. I said her name. I didn't know whose name it was under. I said, I remember this, table 6 under the Don Quixote painting. And she said, oh, yes, they're here. I had waited 15 minutes to make sure if they were late. And he was there. So old spiral phone cords, I heard, and nobody came to the phone, and it disconnected. And that was it. And so I said to myself, he was there. He's been lying for God knows how long. I don't have a sexual relationship with him. We're not close. We're not intimate. I thought it was all about me. But if he can go claim that elsewhere, I think after all of this, I'm kind of done. And I remember in that moment thinking, my poor boys. I was raised without my father. My husband had a really complicated situation with his father. And that's all I could think about. My poor, poor boys. The storm that would come to us in this divorce that I was assuming I was going to pursue. So I took my boys to Barnes and Noble at a big old mall. We had gift cards from Grandma. We went in the store. And I remember my younger son had a Harry Potter game. He was about to check out. And I let them be big boys and take the gift cards. And again, go back in time, I had a flip phone. So I looked down and the area code, I didn't know it. And we weren't getting all the spam phone calls that we get now. And I looked down and the first 3 digits in my mind were from a southern suburb near where I live. The truth is they were the right 3 digits, but in the wrong order. The phone call was from New Hampshire. And it was a doctor telling me that my husband had dropped dead with a heart attack. And I'm in the store with my 2 boys. I could not reconcile this. I could not make these pieces fit together. Could not.
Did he drop dead under the painting in the restaurant?
I don't know. There's so much I don't know.
So all you knew is that your husband was dead and you didn't know where. I mean,
I
generally.
knew it was in New Hampshire, that he'd been at the hotel, or it was a hotel slash restaurant. And that's all I knew. And my response was, again, if I'm going to get me a call, I always say it was operatic, because I don't know if you guys have ever, I don't know if I'd call it a psychotic break, but it was definitely a time when I chose to leave the planet and function in a different way than the rest of the species. And I decided that the person on the phone, for some God only knows reason, was lying to me. My husband was actually alive, and I needed to get him to recant. So I kept yelling, no. And I didn't realize how crazy I was. And apparently I was screaming, hysterical, lost my mind. Long story short, again, I guess we're beyond that now. The police came. Somehow my neighbors that I love were called to pick me up, and we went home. And all of my in-laws came over, and that was the event of his death. Now, not only am I out of my mind, I'm with his DNA family. I cannot tell them he's in New Hampshire with another woman and just dropped dead. In this state, I have to start my widow lies of what's going on with my husband.
Did you think through, did you ever think to yourself, well, I'm just going to tell him, like, they deserve to know. He did me wrong, and I'm going to let him have it?
I have, but I've also thought it wouldn't hurt him. It would hurt them. And I haven't debriefed my boys on this. And now that they're older, because now they're 20 and 16, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that.
Does his family still not know the truth about that?
No idea.
No idea.
Mm-mm.
And you're not sure if your sons know or not, or they don't know?
They don't know that event. They just know that I freaked out because their father dropped dead. My older son, who was 9, has asked me, he's 20 now, has asked me questions, and I think he suspects the issue of infidelity.
Are we sure he actually died? Did you see the body, or do you have ashes?
I have a death certificate.
Okay. Is it real?
Yeah.
I'm sick.
Wait, that's so weird, because when I was being weird, I thought, what if? Yeah, no. And then, here's the other thing. If we weren't sure what his intentions were, this is creepy widow stuff that you only learn when you have it happen to you. His luggage was sent back. His mother and brother were in my house, and I was smart enough to say, can you please step out of the room while I open his luggage? Condoms, which we didn't use, and double hotel keys, the card kind. So what he had done is bought a hotel key for the Boston and a New Hampshire hotel. So if I had called the Boston hotel to check registration, he would have been there, registered.
In my mind, what I'm picturing right now is a big ball of yarn that you left outside and got in a windstorm, and it's all tangled up, and you are tasked with trying to unravel this ball of yarn, but you can't even unravel it because you are also raveling it at the same time, because you're trying to keep this story, or this, the truth about him, hidden at the same time. So it's like you have all of this stuff that you need to deal with, but you're more or less just adding to it.
So yeah, I had to then become the liar that continued his lies, which in some ways was how I lived with him, which was to always act like everything was great when I was outside of the house. So then a complication beyond this occurred, and I don't know if the woman, I don't know if she was, I don't know if she was with him. I have no idea. I've thought of checking her. Ironically, she lives very close to where I live now. Yeah,
Have you ever talked?
No. And we have common friends because it's a small world.
Does she know that you know?
She does know that I know.
Oh my gosh.
Because a weird thing happened. I don't know how she even got this number, but she called my brother-in-law, this is my husband's brother, about 3 days after my husband died, to tell him that his brother died. And it's like, duh. My brother-in-law came to me, goes, why did she call me? So then I'm like, oh my God, I have to lie really fast right now. He was talking with her, and this is true. It's a long story. There was a therapy that she was involved with that he supposedly was talking to her about. So I said he was speaking to her about that kind of therapy, and that's why.
But why would she be the bearer of news to his
Well,
brother?
and 3 days after. So I don't know if she was in a crazy place too. So then I did call her number, and I just said, I know you're not planning to come to the funeral, but if you do, everybody will know. And I was fully prepared to just let it go at the funeral. But she didn't show.
So Ruth, holy cow, you lived in basically a loveless marriage.
Loveless is the right word.
There was deceit. When somebody is in a relationship like that, there's a lot of questioning that goes on, like you said, and walking on eggshells and wondering if it's your fault. The gaslighting, it's classic gaslighting. So you've been through that. Then he dies, and it's so complicated. You have 2 boys, you have a family that you're trying to protect from what your husband was doing outside of your marriage. How in the world did you proceed? Can you tell us what it was like to unravel that for you? I know it's been a long journey.
It has been. And the thing that's really weird about it is I feel like I've come to a really good place, like for myself with it. So now it's weird to click back on in that lie about it capacity. And that's the only time I really feel like I'm not truthful and honest. Because I mean, most of the time when I'm with people, it's not like, hey, tell me about your marriage. It's not like it's been so long. But every once in a while, somebody will say something about, like whether he was a good father, a good husband, and I have to just let it go. I just do. And it's really, really hard.
How was his relationship with your sons? Did they have a close relationship with him? Or, I mean, because if you listen to this show with Shannon, who also had really complicated grief,
I did.
It's like her kids had a different relationship with him than she did. And so for her youngest daughter, there was a lot of grief when there wasn't with the older one. So I just wonder if he had a good relationship with your sons and if they really grieved him, or if they were also like, they didn't have a great relationship with him either.
It's hard for me to know, but I know that my older boy has said that he felt that he wasn't home a lot. And my husband often, he had his own office, so he would go into his own little room. There was a lot of holding up books, so you weren't allowed to interrupt. You weren't allowed to interrupt time on screen. So I don't think they have, like, I miss that about him. I don't think they have that, and that's really sad. It's not to say they never had good experiences, but I don't know. I try to bring it up now, like, are you sad? Because I know it's something that can come back later with children when they develop into adults. I don't know. I don't think so. And I'll say for myself, one of the things that I noticed this does anger me a lot about myself and the relationship. Usually when somebody dies, especially if they're a spouse, you think of all the extra things you have to now assume responsibility for. And the truth is, everything's easier because I was assuming responsibility for everything and also trying to keep a calm in the house at all costs. I think that's how I was complicit, is that I decided, especially with children in the house, it had to be calm. And my husband and I never made time to have any real conversations. So that's the role I played in it. I kind of assisted in it. Mm-hmm.
Do you feel, or have you felt, a sense of guilt? And how have you dealt with that?
Actually, the guilt was nearly debilitating because, again, I think when you're spiraling in horrible emotional trauma, it's almost like really horrible explanations kind of imprint themselves in you, and it's hard to shake them. So I had decided that I had killed him with the phone call. I remember when I finally fessed up to my therapist this whole story that I'm telling you now, I was literally waiting for her to say, you need to leave my office. you facilitated in somebody's death. You cannot sit here any longer. I will not, or something like that. And I've waited for that response for the very few people that I've told. I just thought that's what they would say to me. So I was really messed up, to say the least. I'm good now.
When your therapist did not kick you out,
she did not.
Did you start, was that the day that you felt it was safe to talk about it and to start the healing process? It's a lot to unravel.
She was the first person I told, and I had assumed I would take it with me to my death. But yeah, she was the first person I told. And the way I told her was probably more of a confessional. Like, I have somebody tell you terrible that I did. It took me a long time to understand that I didn't. And that phone calls don't kill people. And it took me a long time to understand that. So I'm better now. I still, I mean, my questions are now less anger at my husband, but more to myself, like, what was I thinking? Because I think I'm this very strong woman. I've endured a lot of hardships besides this. I've kept my boys together. We're an awesome trio. I've accomplished a lot. It's hard for me to celebrate myself as I brag, but I don't know why I tolerated so much and was allowing myself to be so much less. And I mean, that goes back to before my husband too, but I mean, that's the message I would like to give. If there's anybody who's grieving with guilt, there's a diagnosis. It's called complicated grief. And it doesn't mean you're extra sad. It means you have a lot of literally conflicting emotions that actually don't coexist well. And there is a combative emotional time within yourself, which is why I'm not ashamed to say I went for help. And it helped.
Does it help you? Have you heard other stories that are similar in the types of subject matter of your story? And if so, has that helped given you strength?
I, of course, thought I had the only husband who was with another woman when he died. I thought that was the first time in the history of humankind that had happened. So I did some Googling, found that there's a whole lot of women, and not necessarily with the woman when they die, but they find out afterwards that he had history with women. So, and I hate to say it, like, I wish it weren't true, but this is why you have a group of widows. Misery does love company. So when you can find that you're not the only big weirdo and there are other people, it makes you less weird and makes you realize that you're just a human with bad things that happen to you.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, when I went through his office at work in a box, there was a card sealed from another woman.
Oh, so there's more than one.
A love card.
Okay.
Yeah. I know. Shocker, right?
Ruth, you have held a lot of things in your life. I mean, we could have even just stopped with metastatic breast cancer. We could have stopped with that and it would have been a lot. And then you've had all these things to hold and to carry and to hold on to protect others, to hold on to shield yourself, to hold on to because you're questioning, maybe like, will this affect my boys? This is a lot for one person to hold. And I just want to commend you for coming forward with your story, because these are the types of stories that people don't want to talk about, because sometimes in widow groups, it's like people had a typical relationship with their person. And so it's often grief and sadness. And yeah, there may be some things here and there where it's like, yeah, like he was a jerk sometimes, but nothing like betrayal trauma.
Right.
And so I would imagine that for people being in that situation, they don't want to jump in and say, when everyone else is like, I miss my husband so much, what are you going to say?
I was in a widows group. What's that? It's some online where you make groups out of Meetup. I don't know. And I went, it was nice. People were nice, but it was about people being sad and connecting. And that's cool. I connect over dark things too, but I didn't have that sadness. And I just felt like that was another group of people to kind of be fake with. So I didn't continue with that, which is why I like the Facebook forum. There's all kinds of stuff.
There is have you heard of A Reason to Stand?
I have not.
If I have it correct, the woman who started that, her husband was shot and killed. And at first she didn't know why, but then she found out that he had been shot by his mistress's husband. I think so. Similar kind of like betrayal and death at the same time. So I'll send it to you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I know.
There are others, unfortunately.
Yeah, there was a book published, and I don't remember the title. I'm not hiding it. And I actually talked to the author, and she had a 6-year-old daughter and found out about adulterous affairs after he died. And she told her daughter, and she felt that was the way to go, to just be open, which maybe that is. I don't know. I have no idea. But I feel like because I feel like when, at least in my situation, I should only speak for myself. When somebody dies, it's almost like you continue with that relationship with the deceased the way you lived with them. So I continued to promote a pretty good marriage when that was completely a facade. And I continued to try to make him look better to others. So actually those lies, I don't know, it wasn't even a decision. It's just, oh, well, this is what I have to do. It just never occurred to me. Now that I'm level-headed and living, openly, I do wonder, who do I tell? Why would I tell?
So, Ruth, since this has been so much a part of your life, have you defined yourself in terms of that only, or have you found who Ruth really is separate of this? Is that possible?
It's a great question. No, it is possible. And it's funny. I'm a creative person by nature, and I did not create for a very long time while I was married. And since my husband's passed, I've published essays, I've written a few songs, and I've put myself out there with a medication. I'm an ambassador. So no, I feel like I've found another part of myself that's creative. I like to write. I just submitted an essay today. I'm hoping they'll take it. So no, I feel like I really have found myself. And there are a lot of things I do. I will take a moment sometimes to go, this is nice. Like it's a quiet. And I remember never really feeling at ease in my own home.
That's so fascinating. I'm in the songwriter realm, right? And I have a couple friends that are really good writers. And I remember one of them one time told me I could not write while this certain person was in my life. And it wasn't even a romantic relationship. It was just a friend. And she goes, it was just like it put this cloud over my creativity and I had nothing to say. I couldn't get anything out. So man, living under that, I can totally see that.
I have a really good song about this, and it's called You Should Have Been There.
You need to write country songs.
Oh, it's totally country.
Yes.
It's got a country vibe to it. It totally does.
It's the only appropriate vibe for this story.
Oh, yeah. It's called You Should Have Been There. And it turns out it's a great song.
How are your sons doing now?
Really well. I would say the one who was 9 and is now 20 was hit harder and had pre-existing anxiety. And I believe, although whenever I say it, he's like, no, I believe probably PTSD is a part of him. Was shortly thereafter, he started having digestion problems, and we went to, pediatric gastroenterologist and all that stuff. And I'll spare you those details. You've been there. Well, now.
Yep, my daughter, same thing.
Well, now that he's 20, I don't know how old your daughter is. How old's your daughter?
14. She's 14 now.
I don't know if you'll have this to look forward to, but now he gets migraines. And the pediatric neurologist said, a lot of my pediatric migraine people used to have pediatric gastroenterology problems. So I don't know.
It just travels up to your brain.
So he's really good. He's found himself. He's at a small school in the same state. We said, don't go too far because I want to be able to pick you up if you need a rescue. He's never needed a rescue. I want him to live with me forever, but I'm letting him be there. He has a really sweet girlfriend He's actually going to go overseas for school next year. I'm very excited. And I'm scared because it's like, dude, we picked a place sort of kind of close to home and now you're going off the continent. But that's what he wants. And it's a prestigious thing, so we're allowing it. We're a very musical crew. My younger son is sophomore in high school, killing the clarinet, sax, and piano. So yeah, it's they're doing well. I think, I always think as parents, we just overcompensate for where we think our parents goofed up. So I feel like my mother was a little disengaged. So I'm like in them on them. And I'm sure they're going to go to a therapist and say my mother wouldn't leave me alone.
That is the natural order of things. You do what you do, and then your kids go to therapy. And then they ruin their kids. And that is how it works.
And all roads lead back to the mother. So I'm not a spiritual gal, but when I look at my boys and like and that's the other thing. Like I can't go back and say I wish I hadn't married my husband because I have these two boys.
Which is also complicated. It makes it complicated. Yeah.
It is. I was raised with a mom and a grandma, no men, so that's real fun. I mean, it's like they're just such great guys, and I always say we're a triangle because there are three of us, and that's the strongest shape in architecture. So things are good. Very good. And I knock wood for that because, people change, right now things are great.
Well, Ruth, I'm so happy that you were brave enough to share your story. I have a feeling that other people listening will feel so relieved when you said the words, and I don't know if this is the exact words you used, but that you felt relieved when he died, because I think other people feel that, but it's such an uncomfortable thing to say out loud that I don't think a lot of people are willing to say that out loud. And so I think that there will be people who hear that and think.
It took a while because I had to get my mental health for myself in order. And then I looked around and things were easier. But I do sometimes fantasize that we got divorced and the boys had a good relationship with him. There's no fantasy of us staying together. I don't.
Well, and even if you were relieved that he died, I'm sure it didn't make it easy to deal with his death. You still had feelings of grief, I'm sure, but the feelings of grief were much different than feelings of grief that you would have had if you would have had a happy, more typical marriage.
And even shock. The sudden death is shocking.
Well, and you're already in trauma because you are catching him out in betrayal, in the process of betraying you.
I think that's why I spun out so fast and so quickly, because I was already at this pitch level. And then
something's got to give. Boom.
I'm glad your head didn't explode. Yeah.
So Ruth, how is your health? Because a lot of, cortisol and stress, like in the body, it's a whole package. So how are you doing?
I feel great. I don't want to go on a tangent about my health. I do have metastatic breast cancer, but it's very small. Metastatic breast cancer means that I had the cancer that I told you my husband never came to a chemotherapy session for. That's another long story. Manifested again 12 years later. I have very small tumors in the liver. It was found peripherally. I have no symptoms. So I feel great. And I have been on a medication for a while that seems to be doing the job. I have every reason to believe I'm going to be here a long time. But that was more drama in my life when I was like, oh my God. So
you've had your fair share.
Yes.
Too much.
Well, we hope that you continue to heal in all of the ways. And we're so glad that you shared your story. And we know it's going to help others.
I love you guys. Thank you so much.
We have an important question.
Do you want to ask it, Anita?
Yes. What kind of cheese do you eat in your Les Miserables life?
Nothing smoked. I don't even get the concept of smoked cheese. What is that? Yeah. I would probably go... I love cheese, so this is a real question to me.
This is no joke.
I would probably go with an aged Gouda because it's mild and it can take a lot of different wines and it pairs with everything. So that's what I'd go with.
That was the hardest part of the interview. Not talking about your cheating husband and your breast cancer, but picking a cheese. Ruth, thank you for sharing your story. We really appreciate it.
You guys are awesome.
Thank you. We'll take that all day. You can tell us that all day and all night.
I love that people who have been in such dark places know how to laugh with it. And it's so odd and disconcerting, I think, to people who haven't lived in such darkness. But it's how we move forward, I think, ultimately. So I appreciate this.
We learn to live with a paradox, and you don't get it till you go through it. I'm really honored that you would reach out to us and want to share those things. As somebody that's come through similar betrayal trauma, not in a marriage, but in dating relationships, I feel you so hard on so many of the things, and a lot of the things you've shared, I've been through as well, like specific things. And so one day we'll have a chat, but
Give me their names. I will find them.
they don't deserve our energy, Ruth.
Okay.
It's going to help so many people, and especially even somebody that's not a widow, that's a female, or that maybe is a man wanting to know just different circumstances of people. I think it's going to help a lot of people in a lot of ways. So thank you for sharing it here with us.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think anybody that's been through circumstances similar to yours understands why you didn't share before, or why you kept trying to protect. So it's totally understandable, and we're so glad that you found a good therapist that did not tell you that you had to get kicked out. So keep being awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you have found Ruth's story compelling, and also hope that some of you will be able to relate and feel some comfort in difficult and complicated grief. Remember to check out our Patreon. It's patreon.com/WWDN if you want to supply us with tacos, even though our favorite taco shop was closed.
Twice in a row.
Go to buymeacoffee.com/widowwedonow. Until we talk to you next time, I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
I'm Ruth.
We're just two young widows and one Ruth Valjean who did not steal the silver candlesticks and also did not kill her husband with a phone call.
And is also living for one day more.
And we're all just trying to figure out...
Widow, we do know. Another day, another destiny. This is my favorite thing to discuss with you.
Tell me, what is it?
One of my favorite things. I do enjoy tacos and cheese and dogs. This is about how you cannot pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a phone plan, especially when you're a widow, your person is dead, you might have kids, you might need another option, and you just want your phone to work, you want unlimited texting and service, and you want it to be like $25 a month.
It blows my mind that they have plans that start at $15 a month. That is so cheap. And the cool thing is it uses other 5G networks, and so you don't have to pay extra for that, and you still get great service.
Yep. Anita and I have traveled all over, and I have used my phone. So I highly recommend it. And my mom's even on it. When my dad died, we put his phone down to the cheapest plan, which is $15 a month. And I think my mom's on the $20 a month plan, and it's so worth it. It's so much cheaper than what we were all paying before. So I highly recommend it if you're on a budget or not. Who cares? Ryan Reynolds is in charge of the company, and they send you free stickers with Ryan Reynolds temporary tattoos. It's kind of the best. So if somebody wants to sign up, what can they do, Anita?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. Seriously, you guys, such a great idea. Save yourself some money.
And if you're worried about losing data or having any changes with your phone, not going to happen. They walk you through it. Everything's fine. It's the easiest process of all time. Again, that's
trymintmobile.com/WWDN.